It started on a Thursday evening, sometime after dinner, but before I could even get to dessert. Claudia waited until the sink had stopped running, and I just cracked open a cold beer. She stood by the counter, arms crossed, her face unreadable. That should have been my first clue. "Daniel," she said flat. No warmth, no hesitation. "I want a divorce." I blinked, the bottle halfway to my mouth. "You what?" She didn't flinch, just reached into her bag, pulled out a thick envelope, and dropped it on the table with a soft thud. It looked like something you'd see in a courtroom drama. White, heavy, official. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she went on, her voice clipped and professional, like she was presenting a project proposal. "I'm keeping the apartment. I want 70% of our joint savings, and I'll be filing for alimony. The papers are in there." She didn't sit. She didn't fidget. She just stared at me like this was the most natural thing in the world. I looked down at the envelope. My name was typed on the label in bold, neat font. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where is this coming from?" She shrugged. "Daniel, come on. We've been coasting for a while. You live in that little bubble of yours, fixing bikes and coming home with grease under your nails like it's charming. But I want more." It hit like a slap. We'd been married for 5 years. 5 years of grocery runs, Netflix nights, and dumb little inside jokes. And now she was talking like it had all been a phase she was done growing out of. "I'm a mechanic," I said, because it felt like I had to defend it. "I own my shop. I make good money." Claudia tilted her head and gave a half smile. "Not the kind that reaches your eyes. The kind you give when you know the punchline and no one else does yet." "I know," she said sweetly. "But let's be real. You're not exactly going to win a legal war with what you make, and I don't think a grease monkey can afford a real lawyer." That one landed. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I looked at her, really looked at her, and all I saw was cold calculation. "You shouldn't bother fighting it," she added. "I've already got everything lined up. Honestly, if you're smart, you'll just sign and move on." I wanted to argue. I wanted to flip the table or demand answers or scream that she was being cruel. But instead, I just stood there, completely blank. The words came out before I could stop them. "You're right." And that was it. She turned on her heel, heels clicking on the tile, and walked out of the kitchen like a job well done. The envelope sat there on the table, heavy as bricks. I didn't touch it. I just stood still, humiliated, defeated, and wondering how the hell I didn't see this coming. Claudia shut the apartment door behind her with the click of finality, heels tapping confidently down the hallway like she'd just closed a deal, not a marriage. She didn't cry, didn't look back. She'd expected more resistance, some sputtering argument, maybe a last-minute plea. Instead, she got a blank stare and a pitiful little "you're right." It was almost disappointing how easy it had been. By the time she stepped into the elevator, Claudia had already moved past Daniel in her mind. She wasn't going to waste time second-guessing. She had a clean path to the apartment, the better half of the bank account, and alimony lined up. The man barely knew how to work a spreadsheet. He sure as hell wasn't going to hire some high-powered attorney to fight her. Still, as the elevator descended, her mind wandered to one loose thread. Gabriel. Gabriel Hartman, Daniel's older brother. The one no one talked about anymore. She hadn't seen him in almost 6 years, not since that disaster of a weekend down at their late parents' beach house. The place itself wasn't much, a creaky little thing with chipped paint and old sea salt in the floorboards. But it meant something to Daniel. He wanted to keep it, fix it up, maybe raise kids there someday. Gabriel, on the other hand, had wanted to sell. Fast. Market was hot. Cash was king. Claudia remembered standing awkwardly on the porch as the two of them screamed at each other in the driveway. Voices hoarse, faces red. That fight ended with Gabriel throwing a set of keys into the sand and Daniel shouting, "You're not my brother anymore." That had been the end of it. At least, that's what Claudia had always assumed. She smirked at the memory as the elevator dinged open. Gabriel was a name from another life. A suit-wearing, shark-eyed corporate attorney who hadn't sent so much as a Christmas card since the fallout. Claudia figured he'd written Daniel off a long time ago, just like most people did when they realized Daniel was more heart than hustle. There was no way Gabriel would come crawling back now, not over a divorce. She got into her car, pulling out of the lot with that same half-smile still painted on her lips. The papers were in motion. Daniel wouldn't fight. He couldn't afford to. She'd made sure of it. What Claudia couldn't see, was the way Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table that night, hands shaking just slightly over a cheap beer, staring at the envelope she'd left behind. Not with rage, not even grief, but with something sharper, something new. Resolve. That weekend felt like drowning in slow motion. Friday night, I sat in the dark with a six-pack and an empty stomach, trying to tell myself it didn't hurt that bad. By Saturday morning, I'd stopped pretending. The apartment echoed in a way it never had before, like even the walls knew she was gone. Her coffee mug still sat on the counter. Half her clothes were already missing from the closet. I didn't eat, didn't shower, just drank, watched old movies on mute, and stared at the envelope she'd left, still unopened on the kitchen table. It looked bigger every time I passed it. By Sunday night, I was spiraling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face as she said those words. "You shouldn't bother fighting. Grease monkey can't afford a real lawyer." She knew exactly where to cut. She knew how small I'd feel saying nothing. And the worst part was, she was right. I didn't have the money for a lawyer. Not the kind it would take to fight her kind of fight. But I wasn't out of options. Not quite. Monday morning, I woke up with a hangover behind my eyes and a headache that felt like it came with its own heartbeat. I dragged myself to the kitchen, made the weakest coffee I'd ever brewed, and stared at my phone. Gabriel's number was still in there. I'd never deleted it, just buried it under years of silence. We hadn't spoken since the blowout at the beach house. Not even a birthday text. That fight had felt like the kind of thing you don't come back from. But I didn't have anyone else. And I was done being humiliated. I tapped the screen before I could change my mind. The line rang once, then twice. Then, "This is Gabriel." His voice hadn't changed. Still sharp, still composed. I froze for a beat, unsure what to say. "It's me," I finally said. "It's Daniel." There was a pause. Then Danny. Hearing him say it like that, like we were still kids chasing waves and arguing over who got the front seat, just cracked something in me. I hadn't cried all weekend, but suddenly, I couldn't hold it in. I told him everything. About Claudia. About the envelope. About the divorce. About how she said I didn't stand a chance. That I couldn't afford a fight. I told him I felt like a fool. Like she'd planned this for months, and I just never saw it coming. He didn't interrupt. Didn't rush me. Just let me spill. When I finally stopped talking, he said only one thing. "When's the first hearing?" I gave him the date. There was another pause. Then, "I'll be there." That was it. I didn't ask if he was sure. I didn't ask what it meant. I just sat there staring at the phone after the line went dead. For the first time in days, I felt something steady, something solid. Hope. The morning of the hearing, I sat in the courthouse parking lot for 15 minutes before I could make myself go inside. My palms were sweating through the sleeves of my only decent blazer, the navy one I usually reserved for funerals and bank meetings. I hadn't spoken to Gabriel since that call. He hadn't followed up. No texts, no questions. And I figured, maybe he changed his mind. I walked in alone. Claudia was already in the courtroom when I got there, sitting like royalty on the plaintiff's side. Hair curled, pearls on. Her lawyer, some tall guy in a crisp charcoal suit and a haircut that probably cost more than my rent, was leaned over whispering something to her. She smiled like she'd already won. I kept my eyes down and sat in the back row, heart pounding. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd skimmed the envelope she left, just enough to know I couldn't sign anything. Not yet. But I still felt stupid walking in with no attorney and no plan. Just a borrowed pen in my pocket and a knot in my stomach. Claudia glanced back, caught my eye, and smirked. I looked away. The bailiff stepped forward and called the case. The judge took his seat. I rose to my feet, clearing my throat, already expecting to start the hearing by explaining why I had no counsel. And then the doors opened behind me. The sound of heavy wood creaking on brass hinges made everyone pause. Even the judge looked up. Gabriel walked in like he owned the room. He hadn't changed a bit. Still tall, still smooth. Black tailored suit, silver tie, leather briefcase in one hand. He moved through the rows like a storm dressed in silk. He didn't look at Claudia. He didn't look at her lawyer. He walked straight to my side and dropped his briefcase on the table like he'd been doing this forever, which, of course, he had. He nodded once at the judge. Then he turned to me, extended a hand, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Gabriel Hartman, counsel for the respondent." Claudia's attorney blinked. "I'm sorry, who?" Gabriel didn't miss a beat. He gestured toward me. "Daniel is my client." The judge leaned forward. "You're his attorney?" "Yes, Your Honor," Gabriel said smoothly, opening his briefcase. "And his brother." That last part landed like a bomb. Claudia's lips parted. Her posture stiffened. Her lawyer turned to whisper something sharp in her ear, but her eyes never left Gabriel. I looked at him, stunned. "You didn't tell me you were actually going to." Gabriel leaned closer and said quietly, "I said I'd be here, didn't I?" The judge motioned for us to be seated. Gabriel took control immediately, asking for a brief recess to review the documents Claudia's lawyer had submitted. The judge granted it. Gabriel stood and turned to me. "Let's talk strategy," he said. Across the room, Claudia stared at us like she'd seen a ghost. She had thought I would show up alone, that I'd take the hit, sign the papers, and disappear with whatever pride I had left. But now her worst-case scenario had just walked into the courtroom in polished shoes, and he was sitting on my side. The next 2 months were like watching a hurricane unfold in slow motion. Only this time, I wasn't the one getting torn apart. Gabriel went to work like a machine. I'd barely caught my breath after the first hearing when he emailed me a bullet-pointed list of what he needed: access to bank records, joint accounts, tax returns, credit card statements, everything Claudia and I had ever touched financially. I sent it all. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He was cold, clinical, relentless, and Claudia had no idea what was coming. Within 2 days, Gabriel filed a comprehensive discovery motion that read like an audit from hell. He demanded everything: her personal financial disclosures, communication logs, travel records, and details of every transaction she'd made in the past 3 years. He even included an itemized request for her Venmo history. Claudia's attorney, Mr. Designer Haircut, filed objections, of course, claimed it was excessive, invasive, and irrelevant. The judge didn't care. Gabriel's reputation in the legal world carried weight, and every argument he made was tight and methodical. The judge granted the full motion. That was the first time I saw Claudia rattled. She tried to play it cool in court, flipping her hair and whispering to her attorney like nothing was wrong, but I could see the tension in her jaw. The cracks were starting to show. What followed was a full-on legal siege. Gabriel issued subpoenas like they were coupons. Her boss was served. So were her friends. Even her sister was called in for a deposition. I want pressure from every direction, Gabriel said over the phone one night. No room to breathe. I didn't say much. I just listened. It felt strange, watching someone fight for me, especially him. The paperwork buried Claudia. She was suddenly forced to explain every spa trip, every boutique charge, every business lunch that wasn't tied to a job she no longer had. Gabriel questioned the existence of a debit card I'd never even known she owned. And somehow, he found a spreadsheet buried in a shared Google Drive, one she'd used to track household expenses. Only she had been editing it long after we separated. Numbers didn't add up. Gabriel flagged every inconsistency and filed a second motion. This one accused her of strategic misrepresentation of assets. Claudia's lawyer tried to slow things down. He requested extensions, argued for mediation, even suggested a confidential settlement. Gabriel refused. You wanted a war, he told me quietly after court one afternoon. So let's give her one. Meanwhile, I just sat back and watched the woman who called me a grease monkey try to navigate a maze of legal landmines. Every week, another court date, another deposition, another batch of financial documents she had to explain. I still worked at the shop every day, same as always. Customers came and went. Oil changes, brake pads, flat tires. But something in me had changed. I wasn't walking around hunched and ashamed anymore. I wasn't counting myself out. For the first time in a long time, I had someone in my corner. And Claudia? She was drowning. It happened during a deposition on a rainy Tuesday. We were in a cramped conference room downtown, with flickering fluorescent lights and a table that wobbled on one side. Claudia's best friend Natalie sat across from Gabriel, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked nervous before it even started. Gabriel didn't come out swinging. That wasn't his style. He started slow, like a poker player waiting out the table. You've known Claudia for how long? He asked. 15 years, Natalie replied, eyes darting toward Claudia's lawyer at the far end of the room. And in that time, you've remained close? Frequent contact? Yes. You've traveled together, dined together, supported one another through major life events? Natalie nodded. Yes, of course. Gabriel tapped his pen gently against a folder, then paused. And during the last 2 years, you were aware Claudia was still legally married to my client? Yes. Natalie glanced again toward Claudia's attorney. And you also knew she was in a relationship with a man named Sean? The room fell silent. Natalie stiffened. I don't know about that. Gabriel leaned back slightly, calm, almost casual. He flipped open the folder. That's interesting, because we have hotel records that show Claudia booked multiple rooms at the Whitney Hotel downtown, always for 2 guests, often during weekdays, and always with a credit card linked to a separate debit account she never disclosed during financial disclosures. Claudia's lawyer raised his hand. We object to the relevance of. Gabriel waved it off. I'll make it relevant in 5 minutes. He turned the page. Natalie, are you aware Claudia used a hidden debit card, ending in 2379, to purchase a $3,200 watch from Barrow and Hale, 2 rooms at a resort in Napa, and a series of charges at restaurants where she signed under the name Claudia Summers? Natalie went pale. Gabriel pushed forward. Did you ever meet Sean? She hesitated, breathing fast now. I didn't. She said it was over, that it wasn't serious. That's not what I asked. Natalie's voice cracked. Yes. Okay. Yes, I met him. Claudia's lawyer sat forward. This is ridiculous. Gabriel raised his voice just enough to cut through. Did Claudia ever mention that she was planning to move in with Sean? Or that she was trying to secure enough funds through this divorce to do so comfortably? I don't know what she told me in confidence and what I'm supposed to. Answer the question, Gabriel said, voice like steel. Natalie broke. She said she needed to get as much as possible. That Daniel didn't need it. That he'd be fine. She said, her voice shook. She said she had to take care of herself now. That Sean had plans for them. The room went dead quiet. Gabriel nodded, satisfied. Then, calmly, he laid out printouts from the bay. Every hotel booking, every luxury expense, all tied to the same hidden account, all during the final year of our marriage. It was like watching a bridge collapse in slow motion and knowing I'd already walked off it. Claudia didn't say a word. She wasn't there for this deposition, but I imagined her reaction. The stiffness in her jaw, the fake calm, maybe even the tears, though I doubted it. Natalie sat back, silent and pale, like she'd just realized whose side she'd been on all along. Outside, the rain hit the windows harder. Gabriel leaned toward me once the deposition ended and whispered, "Now we're getting somewhere." And for the first time since this started, I saw it clearly. She didn't just betray me emotionally. She was trying to rob me blind. And now she was finally cornered. The morning Sean was scheduled for his deposition, Gabriel wore his favorite tie. I didn't even know lawyers had favorites, but I knew that look by now. Clean, calm, and surgical. He was planning to end someone. Sean arrived 15 minutes late, wearing aviators indoors and chewing gum like a teenager. Claudia wasn't with him. She hadn't shown her face at a deposition in weeks. She didn't need to. She had already begun unraveling through her friends and paper trails. Sean walked into the room with this smug, dismissive air, like he was doing us a favor just by being there. Gabriel didn't flinch. They sat across from each other. Sean slouched, arms crossed. Gabriel with a legal pad and pen, every movement quiet and controlled. Gabriel began with the basics. Name, occupation, address, entrepreneur, Sean said with a smirk, leaning back in the chair. What sort of business are you in? Gabriel asked. Startups, consulting, strategy stuff. Vague as hell. Useless. Gabriel jotted something down and didn't look up. And were you in a romantic relationship with Claudia Hartman during her legal marriage to my client? Sean paused. Look, I don't know what Claudia's been telling you, but this is really none of your business. It became my business, Gabriel replied smoothly. When your hotel bills started appearing in our financial discovery, and when your name showed up on a $4,200 watch purchase, charged to a hidden marital account. Sean shifted in his seat. Did you encourage Claudia to pursue maximum financial gain from this divorce? Gabriel asked. Sean laughed under his breath. Encourage? I mean, she knew what she wanted. That's not a no, Gabriel said. Sean glanced toward Claudia's lawyer. Are we seriously doing this? She told me you guys were already done when we started dating. Gabriel leaned forward, folding his hands. That's funny, because Claudia was still sharing a bank account with my client when you were vacationing with her in Santa Barbara. Would you like me to read the line items from her debit card? Sean blinked. I have room service from the Valencia Resort. Jewelry from Larchmont and Company. Flights booked under a fake name. Yours, actually. Gabriel slid a printout across the table. Sean's jaw tensed as he scanned the sheet. Now let me rephrase, Gabriel said. Did you knowingly participate in a plan to drain marital funds for your personal benefit? Sean didn't answer. If you say no, I'll have to remind you that lying under oath constitutes perjury. And if you say yes, I'll be happy to file a civil suit for fraud and conspiracy after this divorce concludes. That did it. Sean exhaled, long and low. She told me it was hers, he muttered. She said Daniel didn't care, that he was just some passive guy who'd roll over. I didn't know she was using a shared account. She said to push for everything. Did you push her to file for alimony? Gabriel asked. Yes. Did you advise her to take the apartment and the savings? Yes. Were you in a relationship the entire time she was still legally married? Yeah. That was all we needed. Claudia's lawyer called the next morning. Voice low, tone pleading. He offered to settle. Gabriel's response was razor sharp. She tried to break him. She doesn't get to walk away clean. And just like that, we stopped playing defense. Now we were moving in. 6 months after Claudia dropped that envelope on our kitchen table, I walked into the same courthouse a completely different man. I wore the same navy blazer, sure, but it fit differently now. Or maybe I carried myself differently. I wasn't hollowed out or defeated anymore. I wasn't wondering if I had any fight in me, because now I knew I did. Gabriel met me at the front steps, already scrolling through his notes, calm as always. He nodded when he saw me. You ready? He asked. More than you know, I said. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with a kind of quiet anticipation, like everyone knew something big was about to happen. Claudia sat at the plaintiff's table again, but this time she didn't look smug. She looked smaller. Her lips were pressed into a hard line, her posture rigid. Her hair was still perfectly curled, her outfit still expensive, but the sparkle was gone. Her lawyer sat next to her, flipping through a binder and avoiding eye contact. The judge took his seat, and Gabriel stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't grandstand. He just laid out the facts, meticulously, methodically, like a surgeon with a scalpel. He detailed the financial misconduct, the hidden debit account, the affair. He showed Sean's testimony, Natalie's admission, the credit card statements, the timeline. He showed how Claudia had siphoned funds from the marriage to bankroll her second life, without my knowledge, without my consent, while pretending she was entitled to more. I watched Claudia's face shift throughout, tightening when Sean's name came up, paling when the receipts were handed over, flinching when Gabriel used the word fraud. Her lawyer didn't interrupt much. He looked exhausted, outmatched. Gabriel ended with one simple line. My client is not only the wronged party, he is the only one who came to this courtroom in good faith. And that was that. The judge looked over the paperwork one last time, adjusted his glasses, and gave his ruling. No alimony, no apartment. Claudia would receive nothing from our joint savings. And this part made her eyes go wide. She owed me restitution, $52,000, to be repaid over time, with penalties. The courtroom went silent for a long moment. Then it was over. Claudia stood up slowly, like her legs had stopped working properly. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word. Her lawyer tried to talk to her, but she brushed past him like she couldn't get out of there fast enough. Gabriel packed up his briefcase with a satisfied nod. Told you we'd flip the script, he said. 3 days later, I heard through a mutual friend that Sean dumped her. Claimed he didn't want to deal with the fallout. Classy guy, all the way through. By the end of the week, Claudia had closed all her social media. Her friend circle? Gone. Her lawyer? officially withdrawn as counsel. I didn't feel joy watching it all fall apart, but I did feel peace. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I had won. And I did it standing tall. 3 weeks after the final judgment, my phone rang just past 7 a.m. It was Gabriel. "Meet me at the house," he said. I didn't ask which house. I already knew. When I pulled into the gravel drive an hour later, the beach air hit me like a memory. The siding on the place was still chipped, the porch still creaked under your boots, and the screen door hung crooked on one hinge. But it looked less abandoned now, like someone had been here, like something had changed. Gabriel was on the porch in jeans and a faded hoodie, coffee mug in hand. I couldn't remember the last time I saw him look so unpolished. "You actually came," he said with a small smile. "I said I would," I replied. He gestured toward the other chair. "Sit. Before we start tearing the place apart." We sat for a while in silence, just listening to the ocean beyond the dunes. It was late spring, still cool enough that the breeze felt sharp. I didn't mind. Gabriel finally broke the quiet. "I hated you for a long time," he said simply. "Or maybe I just hated that you saw value in this place. In any of this." I nodded. "I hated you too. You wanted to sell everything, turn memories into dollars." We both stared at the weather-worn boards beneath our feet. "I thought moving on meant cutting loose," he said. "You thought it meant holding on." "Turns out," I said, "we were both just avoiding something." He looked over at me then, eyes softer than I'd seen in years. "You fought back, Danny. You didn't let her win." I shrugged. "I had help." He raised an eyebrow. "You called me." "That wasn't nothing." I didn't respond, but we both knew what that call had cost me. "So," he said, standing and stretching, "you still want to keep the place?" "I do," I said, "but I don't want to just keep it. I want to fix it, make it something again." Gabriel nodded, almost like he'd been waiting to hear that. "Then we do it together." And just like that, we got to work. We started that morning, pulling weeds, sanding paint, scraping rust off the old railing. We didn't talk about the divorce. We didn't talk about Claudia, or the trial, or Sean, or anything else that still lingered like dust in a corner. We just worked together. That old beach house, once the source of our biggest fight, became the place where we slowly stitched ourselves back together. We found pieces of our childhood in the attic, fixed broken hinges with shared tools, ate sandwiches on the porch while watching the sun slide into the sea like it had every night for decades. Claudia tried to take everything. She walked in thinking I was nothing without her. But in the end, all she really did was give me back the one thing I thought I'd lost forever. My brother, my home, my future. From the ruins of a marriage, I got something better. A beginning.